now the soil has warmed up a little bit, I can plant out this rocket. You can see that I'm spacing them quite wide apart, at least 6 and as much as 9 inches. If you sow the seed in a drill, you get a rash of young seedlings, and even if you thin them to 1 inch or 2 inches apart, they're still very small. Whereas when they're spaced widely, you get strong roots and a big plant, and that gives you 3 or even 4 cuttings of the leaves. So basically, you get more leaf for your seed. Now, I'm also going to be sowing brassica in a seedbed. I'm planting cordon apples, lilies in pots. It's plants all the way. In tonight's programme, Carol celebrates a plant that typifies all that is glorious about the month of April, the primrose. And we visit York to see how a seemingly ordinary back garden can produce a rich and varied harvest. Come on. We do an awful lot of seed sowing, and it always involves seed trays and quite often heated mats and greenhouses and then cold frames and pricking out and potting on. And I know it can seem a bit of palaver, but you can grow and sow seeds without any of that fuss. It can all happen outside in a seedbed. And that's what I'm establishing here. Nelly, bring me the seeds. There's a good girl. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely. You just need a patch of ground. It wants to be sunny and clear of big stones and reasonably well drained. Now, I've covered this with cloches because it was raining this morning and I want to keep it dry. It doesn't want to be too wet, but if I just take some of the cloches off, and I'm going to put down a board, and all I'm going to do is run my hand down to make a line, and I'm going to do another one parallel to it, there. Now, the plants that really lend themselves to this are brassica. And I'm going to sow some purple sprouting broccoli. It's one of my favourite vegetables. Just about to be ready for harvest now. So you sow it a full year ahead. It's a long-term investment in plant and soil and worth it. Fabulous stuff. So, the idea is to raise seedlings until they're big enough to transplant to their final growing position. And the advantages of that over the very finest potting compost and the best, most fancy greenhouse is they start life from day one with the bacteria and the fungi of the soil interacting with the roots that they are going to grow in. These plants are going to have to be thinned to about 2 inches apart, maybe even 3 inches, so there's absolutely no point in sowing them too thick. So I'll get 3 short rows from one packet. Now I can just lightly cover the seeds over, and I just find that running your fingers down either side of the drill pushes the soil back in over the top of them. You don't need to worry about it too much. All I've got to do is keep it weed-free, and around about early to mid-June they'll be ready to transplant to their final growing position when they're about 5 or 6 inches tall. I'm not going to cloche them now, because it's sort of spitting with rain and I want a bit of moisture, but if it gets very cold or torrential rain, I've got the cloches to hand to protect the seedlings. It's a very simple, easy way of raising a lot of plants. And many of us are growing vegetables as a treat as much as anything else. If there's something that you love to eat, it's going to be nicer and more fun if you grow it yourself. But there are some people who are truly self-sufficient in fruit and vegetables. And last summer, we went to York to meet one such couple.
Well, this is our garden. It's a suburban garden on the edge of York, and it's about 1 acre in total. It was a former nursery, and it's packed with all kinds of different things. So we have fruit, vegetables, ornamental garden, greenhouses.
Most people who come to visit the garden are amazed at what we've got here. As soon as they come through the gate, they really are surprised at what they see.
So we're not Tom and Barbara from The Good Life. We don't have a rotavator-powered trailer. We don't even have a chicken called Stalin, although we do have some hens.
Come on.
But we're not trying to be self-sufficient in the sense of cutting ourselves off from the rest of the world. So we obviously buy food in the normal way, but we don't.
Not fruit and vegetables.
We don't buy fruit and vegetables.
Not fruit and vegetables.
And we do try and eat seasonally.
Yes.
But what we do try and do is grow a few new things each year. And I guess over the last 35 odd years, we've probably tried most things that you can grow in an English climate.
Early jalapeno. We've got Hungarian hot wax, and we've got cayenne peppers as well. We've also got a few melons just ripening in here as well. Melons are a bit of a challenge for us, but we always try.
And so this year we've got two types. We've got one called Malaga, which is the striped one, and we've got another one whose name escapes me right now.
I think it's sweetheart, isn't it?
Is it?
I think.
I got it. It's Emir or Emir? How do you pronounce it? Emir. Okay.
In this garden, we have over 100 fruit trees and maybe about 80 varieties,
Probably about
would you
80
say?
different varieties.
And a few of those are Yorkshire varieties, like the Ribston Pippin. But a lot of our varieties come from all over Europe, don't
Well,
they?
we've got Ingrid Marie, which originally came from Denmark. We've got Kids Orange Red, which originally came from New Zealand. It's probably a little bit more difficult to grow fruit in the north of England, but not necessarily as difficult as most people think. To get a nice ripe eating apple, you need plenty of sun. So what we tend to do is grow the eating apples in a sunny position like this, and in the shadier positions we tend to grow either cooking apples or the very early eating apples, where they will still ripen even if there's not a great deal of sunshine.
This is an early russet, and it's a really, really nice apple.
Everybody should grow this apple. It's one of the best apples you can
Absolutely.
grow in
We
a
love this
garden.
apple. So, in terms of picking, what we do is cup the fruit and then just lift, and it comes away cleanly. If it doesn't come away cleanly, then we would actually leave it on the tree.
So we put it in, stalk up, and we're going to make a single layer of apples in this box.
So we only ever store the absolutely perfect apples. So every apple we pick, we look it over and make sure it's absolutely perfect before it goes in the box.
Okay, this one's got a few bruises on, so I'm not actually going to store that one. I'm going to put that in the juicing basket. What you essentially need to store apples and pears is you need something fairly dry, but not so dry that the apples will shrivel. You need to avoid frost getting into there, and also you need to avoid mice getting into the store as well.
Most apples taste better when they're kept in store for a little while.
I think if you've got land, I think you should use it effectively.
Some of it's hard work, but it's worth it at the end of the day to be producing our own food.
Of how you can grow a wide range of fruit in a relatively small space. You don't need a great orchard full of vast trees, and that's something I want to build on now. A couple of weeks ago, I started to make what will become our new soft fruit garden. Still work in progress, but I'm ready to start some planting. And I'm going to make a hedge, a fruity hedge to go around the outside. And I can do that by growing them as cordons. And the brilliant thing about cordons is that you can have any kind of apple tree you like, as long as it's spur-bearing, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute, in a really restricted space, because it only needs to be about that wide, and I'm going to grow them as low as this, which is about 4 foot, which matches the other hedges here, although you can go up to about 6 or 8 feet. And because they're so restricted in their pruning, you can plant them very close together, 2 or 3 feet apart, which means if you've got 10 foot of fence free, you could have 3 different apple trees. And cordons are essentially trees with just one stem and tiny little spur-like branches coming off it. The spurs are the key, because most apples, not all, but most are spur bearers. And you can see here, each of these are spurs, and essentially you can think of this as a branch as well as the main stem. And these will all bear fruit. Now, I'm going to start by angling them across towards the north, and they need to be planted literally at 45 degrees. And what that does is give it the best of vertical growth for energy and horizontal growth to encourage flowering. And I'm also facing it north, which will limit and constrict its growth. If I had them facing the other way, the south, they would be more vigorous. And actually, because this is low, I'm not looking for vigour, I'm looking for fruit. Okay, let's put that to one side for the moment. Mycorrhizal fungi is a really good idea with any woody plant because it just helps it establish quicker. And then once it's established, it'll have its own relationship and it will build its own fungi. Now, you can see here that the graft, which is there, must be above the soil. It applies to all apple trees and pears. It joins the roots. The top determines the fruit, and the roots determine the vigour and the shape of the plant. Now these, for the record, are on M9 rootstock, which is quite dwarfing because we don't want these to be too big. This is Red Windsor, and it will harvest mid-season, late September. And I'm planting these in pairs, so one will pollinate the other. You can buy self-pollinating apples, but it's always better to plant two, and that will ensure fruit. And the fruit will come, even though they're small, even though I've just planted them. They've got blossom, that will turn into fruit, and in their season, I will eat and enjoy them. Now, talking about in their season, we're in April. And again, Carol is selecting the plant which for her epitomises this month.
Early in the year, as I'm wandering around the lanes in my adopted home of Devon, the twigs are bare, the grass is green, and then suddenly, here and there, you see these sparks of light. Before you know where you are, the whole banks, the hedgerows are completely awash with these beautiful pale flowers. They are, of course, primroses. I've come to Cornwall, to the only Plant Heritage National Collection of double primroses in the country. Primroses belong to the Primulaceae family. It's a huge genus spread across the northern hemisphere. Everything from auriculas from the Alps to those glorious candelabras from Asia. This is a favourite of mine. It's Marie Cruz. This is a primrose which has played a really interesting part in the whole development of double primroses. Florence Bellis, who is the most important hybridist of primroses and whose nursery Barnhaven became synonymous with the breeding of modern varieties, used this to create a lot of the modern doubles that many of us grow in our gardens today. Just look at that. Isn't she beautiful? Primroses love cool, damp banks, glades and hedgerows. They're tremendously successful woodland plants, having evolved. Why primroses are such a success story is that 57 million years ago, they actually developed into two separate forms. One's called thrumide and one's called pinnide. Here's a thrumide. Here are all the anthers arranged around the top, and deep down, right in the heart of the flower, is the actual stigma, the female bit, whereas in the pinnide Here is the stigma, actually protruding from the flower. But there are the anthers, full of pollen. These are the male bits which will pollinate the other flowers. And the whole idea of this is that you're much more liable to get cross-pollination, so the resultant plants from those are going to be much, much stronger. If you want to try and create your own primrose hybrids, you can use a very simple method. So I'm going to move some pollen from this thrum-eyed one, and I'm going to move it right over to this pin-eyed one. A nice fresh flower, that one's ideal. And I'm just going to daub it over the top of that stigma. That should do it. That pollen will go right down the pollen tube into the ovary behind the flower, and eventually that will swell and be full of seeds. It's a really great idea with all your primroses to dig them up and divide them every couple of years or so. It reinvigorates them. Normally, when you were doing this, you probably do it, as Miss Jekyll said, when the flowers are on the wane. Well, this one isn't flowering, but it's a great time, although the soil's rather soggy. Look at these fabulous roots, but you can tell this plant is almost separating itself. And I dare say we can make, what, maybe as many as 10 out of this one plant. And now, all we've got to do is trim these roots. You want to put the sort of length of your palm, that's about 4 inches, 10 centimetres, and just take a sharp knife and trim them across. It looks a bit brutal, but it actually encourages that little plant to make fine, fibrous feeding roots when it gets into the soil, and that's what you want. And when you plant them, try and plant them like this so that you'll achieve this same kind of lovely sort of arrangement. I think that looks really beautiful. And with a bit there are so many delightful primulas, you don't know which to choose. Just look at this great swathe of this glorious one called Pridham's Lee, and it makes these gorgeous big rosettes of fresh green leaves and these snowy white flowers that just tumble from the centre. It's a delight. There used to be lots of varieties of double primroses, but one of the few remaining ones is Bonaccord Purple. It's truly strong, robust and utterly gorgeous. For me, primroses are the epitome of spring. They really are the stars of April.
Well, like Carol, I love primroses. If anyone ever asks me, I always say they're my favourite flower, although the truth is, I like whatever is looking good on the day. And here at Longmeadow today, the primroses are eclipsed, I think, by these wood anemones, which are so happy. A little bit of sunshine, they open out, and I probably planted no more than a dozen originally, and all the rest have spread by seed over the years. And now is their moment. Now, while spring bulbs are dominating the garden, it's time to look ahead a bit and plan for summer bulbs. And certainly the most dramatic summer bulbs have to be lilies. And it's a perfect time to plant them in pots, and they'll steadily grow for flowering in July and August. And I've got some here called Gizmo. Comes highly recommended, both for its magnificent white flowers and its fragrance. Now this is a fairly typical lily pot, which are always deep, because Gizmo, for example, will grow to a full metre height, and they're tall and they need a bit of heft at the base, and proportionately they look better. So don't plant lilies in a little pot, even if you're just doing one bulb at a time. They'll get unstable. So what bottom of the pot, put a crock, and then some compost. But, and this is the tricky bit, it is really good for lilies to add some leaf mould. I know I'm always banging on about leaf mould, but it is fantastic stuff. And the reason why it's good, open, friable compost. And leaf mould delivers exactly that. And then the bulbs can go in. And 3 will be plenty, because these are big plants. And then we can cover it over. And that's it. Now, there's nothing more to do with this, but they aren't going to do very much either, so you don't want to put them into their final position yet. I always put my lily pots to one side, not in full blazing sun, nor in deep shade, and make sure they don't dry out. So water them once a week, and then you can move them to their final position when the flower stems start to appear, which will be sort of the middle to the end of June. And put them where you can most enjoy the drama of their flowering and the beauty of their fragrance. Now, I don't know if you think that lilies are the best plants or the most important plants, but everybody has their view on this. And this week, it's the turn of Joe Swift. Tell us which plant he thinks has had the greatest impact on us gardeners and our gardens over the last 50 years.
I've chosen Steepa gigantea, the golden oats. It's a fantastic ornamental grass, reaching about 6 foot in height, with its straw-coloured stems and seed heads over a mound of evergreen foliage. For me, it really represents all the ornamental grasses out there and how they've influenced and changed the looks of our gardens. Grasses aren't about colour and blousiness. They are wonderfully majestic and stately. They're so versatile. They work well in a contemporary or traditional garden, but also in a rural or town setting too, bringing in sort of a naturalistic element into a planting scheme. And grasses fundamentally change the way we garden. We're looking for plants that don't need mollycoddling and deadheading and feeding and watering all the time, and grasses fit the bill nicely. So for me, golden oats has got to be the Golden Jubilee winner.
Come on then. Come on. You've got 2 balls now. Well, I do agree with Joe that grasses in general have transformed the way that we've got over the last 25 years. And certainly, I remember at the beginning of the 90s, hardly anybody had grass borders in this country, and now they're very common. And also the attitude, the way that we garden has become much looser as a result. One note from experience, Steepa gigantea, which is a fabulous plant, so now I only grow it here in the dry garden, where we get the same amount of rain as everywhere else, but the drainage is really good. Well, we've had a bit of everything today. Some rain, sun, wind, at least it's quite warm. Let's find out what the weather is going to be like for us over the weekend.
Well, as promised, the weekend weather's looking absolutely beautiful across most of the UK. I think it's going to be time to dust off those barbecues and enjoy some of those spring displays out in the garden, and those wonderful Weather Watcher pictures keep coming in. So what have we got in store for Saturday? This is going to be the best day of the weekend. Perfect weather for gardening outdoors. You might want to sow some vegetable seeds into the ground. Really beautiful for that, staying dry all day long. And then there is going to be a change as we head into Sunday. A weather front will be coming into the northwest, so here perhaps turning more cloudy by the time we get to even early on Sunday morning. But the temperatures are going to peak on Sunday across England, so the northwest will cool off, but England will keep on warming up. So temperatures, in fact, could nudge up to around 23 degrees, for example, in London, and around 20 degrees across Yorkshire as well. Enjoy the weekend.
Now that the new foliage is forming on the dogwood cornice, it's a good time to cut it back. Cut back dogwood every 2 or 3 years to stimulate vigorous regrowth that has extra bright bark, and it's that bark in January and February and early March that I think is the 1 or 2 cuttings per plant. And having mixed up a very gritty compost mix, strip off all but the top part of the foliage. Bury the cut stem against the edge of a pot and put the cuttings somewhere warm, water them, and they should start to show signs of new growth in a few weeks' time. I love ferns, and ones like Dryopteris look fantastic all winter. But now it's time to cut them back, remove all dying, broken, old growth. And then you'll be able to enjoy the new fronds as they slowly start to unfurl. It is a good idea to check your climbing plants, whether they're roses like this or wisteria, clematis. Make sure that they're securely fixed or whatever you're supporting them with, that the twine isn't rotten if it's old, and so on and so forth. That way, when they really start to grow, you know they'll be properly secured and you can enjoy the flowers. Mind you, here in the writing garden, I am enjoying the flowers. They're growing fast. This lovely daffodil Thalia is dominating it, but we've got the bleeding hearts, the white bleeding heart coming through. We've got white hyacinths. I've got a clematis alpina, a couple of them. White, they're small, but they are flowering and they will grow up. And this winter I took out an apple tree and dramatically pruned this one, which is a Herefordshire beefing, to let light in here. So hopefully this summer it'll be singing its white song better than ever. But I'm afraid no more singing from me today because we've run out of time. However, I will be back next weekend, Easter weekend, with a full 1-hour programme. So join me here at Longmeadow then. Till then, bye-bye. Come on, you two.